Jonathan Drouin, the topic of conversation for this bonus episode of Hockey Inside Out. He has more goals now than he did last year. I'm not sure about his points, though. I think he has 17 to this point in the year. Still a couple points fewer than what he had last year, obviously, in more games. So there are some improvements here and there in his play, but some feel that he's still rather too inconsistent. And some may even think that may even push on to younger players, especially with the roster as it is right now, where they have a lot of unknowns and a lot of rookies and young players vying for roster spots. So I'd like to know from you, starting with Stu, do you think Jonathan Drouin's inconsistency and work habits could set a poor example for the younger players on this team?
I don't think anybody on the Canadiens is looking at Jonathan Drouin as an example for work ethic to start with. I mean, Jonathan Drouin is who he is. He plays his game. He's been that way the whole time. You mentioned he's got 17 points. He's only 2 points behind Nick Suzuki for the team lead in scoring, and he's played 7 less games than Suzuki.
Yeah.
So, Drouin is who he is. I mean, he's not he's not the hardest working guy out there. He never has been. He never will be. He needs to produce more offense, but like I said, he's 2 points behind Nick Suzuki for the team scoring lead. He's played 7 less games, and Drouin is who he is. So I don't think guys maybe look at Brendan Gallagher or guys like that to get inspired with their work ethic, or the Mike Pizzettas of the world, or the fourth liners. Jonathan Drouin is who he is, and he needs to produce more. But after what he went through last season and coming back this season, I don't think he's had a horrible year. He is who he is, and he's second in team scoring. And that's I don't think anybody's going, oh, I'm not working hard because Jonathan Drouin isn't working that hard. I don't think other players are looking at him for that.
Yeah, I agree with you, Stu. In all fairness to him, he's racked up a few points. Yes, we can talk about his inconsistency. Yes, we can talk about his work ethic, but that I don't think is ever going to change. It has never changed since we've seen him and what we've heard of him. So to have some of the younger guys, so-called look up to him for any type of direction, I don't think is fair, because there's probably some other guys also that the expectations should be greater as far as their overall desire and willing to pay the price at this stage. But like you mentioned, Jonathan Drouin is what he is, and that's the type of personality that you have, and you have to deal with that. But I don't know what his work ethic is like in practice. We see it obviously in the games. I don't see him in practice. I wish he could be like a guy that I coached named Wayne Gretzky, that did absolutely nothing in practice, but obviously when the game started, he knew what to do. But anyways, everybody's different. Things are ugly right now in each and every one of their situations. Professionally, they're not getting it done, and it's really easy to point the finger. But hopefully they're going to get everybody back. They're going to find a way to get their act going in a little bit more of a positive way in a lot of areas. And then I'm hopeful that they're going to make some changes in their dressing room.
Turkey.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. I don't think Jonathan Drouin is a guy that necessarily deserves this kind of focus. You look at his production, like we could say he should produce more, but he's on pace for 52 points over an 82-game season. That's about his average his entire time with the Montreal Canadiens. He's a 50-ish point guy. He does that essentially every single year. If you pace it up to 82 games, he is that guy. He's a second line offensive guy who isn't there to face tough defensive assignments. This year, he's playing above his station, as are most players on the Montreal Canadiens this year. I don't think that there's a big issue with Jonathan Drouin. I think he's somebody who's a support player, right? He's a luxury player. He's not necessarily a core player. And I think the biggest issue with Jonathan Drouin in Montreal was that he was acquired and sold to the fan base and to the media as the next great thing. He's going to be the first line center of the Montreal Canadiens. It was never in the cards. It was, like, to be very harsh about it, it was a very stupid thing for the Montreal Canadiens to do and say about Jonathan Drouin when nothing in his career suggested that he would be that kind of player. He is
when they gave up the player they ended up giving up in exchange to make that happen. In
absolutely. especially when you just lost Andrei Markov, right? So
Yeah.
it's a confluence of very bad ideas and very bad management that led to the perception of Drouin today. I think he's a perfectly fine NHL player. I haven't heard anything bad about his practice habits. I've heard good things about his off-season habits and his practice habits. It's just that in a game, he's not a perfect player, and very few players are, but he does what he always does, which is produce at around a 50-point pace. He's doing that this year. He's one of the few players this year that I say is playing at what we expect, as opposed to far below. And like Nick Suzuki, he's being asked to do a lot. He's playing a lot of minutes right now. I mean, not to the same extent as Suzuki, who's playing like 25 minutes a game. But like if Jonathan Drouin is not booking it back to the bench at the end of every shift, I'm fine with that because he's playing like 20 minutes a game and he should be playing 14.
Yeah, well, I mean, before COVID, I watched just about all of the Canadiens practices, and I can tell you that he works hard in practice. Mm-hmm. And we talk about leadership. I don't think Jonathan Drouin has ever had an A on his sweater with the Canadiens, unless I'm mistaken. And he's not a leadership type guy. That's why when you look at the guys, the rotating A's that have gone through, he's not that guy. I think he's liked by his teammates. And I think he's one of those guys that the game always came easy for him. I think as a kid, Jonathan Drouin probably didn't have to work that hard, and he was the best player on the ice, just with his natural ability. And I don't think all of a sudden that just clicks like a Brendan Gallagher who's had to work his butt off for everything he's ever got in hockey just to get to the NHL. I think for Drouin, he got to the NHL on his talent and his skill alone. And that's what's kept him in the NHL. And remember, Rick, a few shows ago, you mentioned Pierre LaRouche, I think. And there's a guy who didn't work very hard, but put up a lot of points, right? It was so as I said, with Drouin is sort of like a modern day type of Pierre LaRouche, although he's not going to score 50 goals.
So essentially we look at Jonathan Drouin as a guy who is who he is, but isn't necessarily the model of consistency. One, fine, that's a very fair criticism to say, but also might not be the biggest or greatest example for players to look at on this team. Is that something we can all kind of more or less agree with?
Well, I think Andrew nailed it. I think you nailed it, Andrew. You said he's one of the few Canadiens players who's playing up to where you sort of expected him to play this season.
So if you're going to take inspiration,
55 points, that's what you expect from Jonathan Drouin. There's not a lot of other players on this team who have played up to what you expect them to play.
Yeah, if they're going to take inspiration from him, they could look at his practice habits, like Stu said, like he can lead in that way. Or, hey, what's the first thing that Jonathan Drouin did when he was signed in Montreal? After the trade, when he got his new contract, he made a gigantic commitment to the Children's Hospital. That's another inspiring thing for future stars in Montreal. Give back to the community. So I think there's lots of things that you can point to with Jonathan Drouin as positive things, but in terms of like consistency on the ice, maybe not, but that's fine.
And with what he went through last season, not a bad comeback for him.
100%. That is very true. Visit hockeyinsideout.com to check out full episodes of Hockey Inside Out. Leave us a note in the comment section to give us your thoughts on Jonathan Drouin's play this year, and subscribe to the Hockey Inside Out newsletter.